Imagine a U.S. Navy destroyer worth over $2 billion cutting through narrow waters at night. Radar screens glow, sonar hums, everything looks calm. Then suddenly, dozens of fast, moving blips appear at once. They're small, they're fast, they're everywhere. No warning missile launch, no single target to lock onto. Just chaos spreading across the screen in seconds. Here's the shocking truth. Some of the most advanced warships on Earth are most vulnerable not to massive fleets or hypersonic missiles, but to swarms of small, cheap boats moving with deadly coordination. And at the center of this nightmare scenario sits one Iranian vessel designed for exactly this kind of fight. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're breaking down why Iran's Azarakhsh boat has become a quiet but serious concern for U.S. naval planners, and how Iran's swarm tactic could change the balance of power in some of the world's most dangerous waters. What makes this story so unsettling isn't just the technology, it's the strategy behind it. Because this isn't about beating the U.S. Navy ship for ship. It's about overwhelming it, confusing it, and exploiting the smallest cracks in even the most advanced defenses. And as we go deeper, you'll see why this approach keeps resurfacing in Pentagon threat assessments, war games, and classified briefings. Picture the Persian Gulf. It's narrow, it's crowded, it's filled with commercial traffic, fishing boats, tankers, and patrol craft. This environment already limits the maneuverability of large warships. Now imagine introducing dozens of fast attack boats into that space, all moving at high speed, all armed, all coordinated. The Azarakhsh is not a massive vessel. It's not meant to be. It's designed for speed, agility, and shock. And in naval warfare, shock is often more dangerous than raw firepower because shock disrupts decision-making. Shock overwhelms systems. Shock creates hesitation, and hesitation in combat can be fatal. Here's the loop that keeps military analysts awake at night. How do you defend against many threats at once when each individual threat is cheap, expendable, and fast? The Azarakhsh doesn't need to survive. It needs to get close enough. That alone changes the math of naval defense. A U.S. destroyer may carry advanced missile systems, layered defenses, and elite crews, but it cannot fire unlimited interceptors. It cannot track infinite targets at the same time. And it cannot afford to waste million-dollar missiles on every small boat without consequence. That imbalance is the heart of the swarm tactic. Iran's naval doctrine has long acknowledged a simple reality. It cannot compete with the United States in traditional naval warfare. It cannot build aircraft carriers or large fleets of destroyers. So instead, it chose asymmetry. The Azarakhsh fits perfectly into this philosophy. It's designed to operate in groups, to strike quickly, and to retreat or sacrifice itself if necessary. Each boat becomes part of a larger weapon system. Alone, it's limited. Together, it's dangerous. Now pause for a moment and consider the emotional weight of this from the perspective of sailors at sea. Imagine standing watch on a warship knowing that a threat might not appear as a single missile or a single ship, but as dozens of fast-moving targets rushing from multiple directions. The stress alone is immense. Every second matters. Every decision carries enormous consequences. This is not science fiction. This is a scenario repeatedly simulated in naval exercises. And time and again, the swarm proves difficult to counter perfectly. Another loop to hold onto. Speed changes everything. The Azarakhsh is built for rapid acceleration and high maneuverability. In confined waters, speed equals initiative. Initiative allows the attacker to dictate the tempo of the engagement. That means forcing the defending ship to react rather than plan. Reaction favors the swarm. Planning favors the larger fleet. Iran understands this deeply, and its training reflects it. The goal is not a prolonged engagement. The goal is confusion, saturation, and pressure. Let's talk about saturation because this is where the nightmare truly forms. Modern warships rely on layered defense systems. Long-range sensors detect threats early. Missiles engage at distance. Close-in weapon systems handle anything that gets through. But all of these systems have limits. They can track only so many targets. They can fire only so fast. When dozens of Azarakhsh boats attack simultaneously, they're not all expected to survive. Some will be destroyed. That's assumed. But if even one or two break through the defensive layers, the consequences can be catastrophic. This is where the cost exchange becomes brutally effective. A small attack boat costs a fraction of a modern interceptor missile. From a strategic perspective, forcing an adversary to spend enormous resources defending against cheap platforms is a victory in itself. Even without sinking a ship, the swarm can drain readiness, exhaust crews, and limit freedom of movement. That pressure accumulates over time, and pressure changes political decisions. Now here's a secondary hook to keep in mind: the Azarakhsh is not operating alone. It's part of a broader ecosystem. Drones, coastal missiles, mines, and shore-based radar all feed into the same strategy. The swarm doesn't need perfect intelligence. It needs enough information to move fast and hit hard. When layered with other systems, the threat multiplies. Each element supports the others, creating a web that's far more complex than a single attack vector. Think about the psychological dimension again. Large warships are symbols of power. They project confidence, they reassure allies. But when those ships must constantly remain on high alert in narrow waters, that confidence can erode. Sailors know that a small mistake, a delayed response, or a misidentified contact could have serious consequences. This constant tension is itself a weapon. Iran doesn't need to fire a shot to achieve part of its objective. The presence of the swarm is enough. Another loop emerges here: unpredictability. Unlike large naval vessels with defined patrol routes and clear signatures, fast attack boats can blend into civilian traffic. They can appear suddenly. They can disperse just as quickly. This complicates rules of engagement and decision-making. When is a threat truly a threat? When does a contact cross the line from civilian to hostile? These questions matter deeply in real-world operations, where a wrong decision can escalate a crisis or cause unintended casualties. The Azarakhsh also represents a cultural approach to warfare that values resilience and sacrifice. Crews are trained with the understanding that missions may be one way. This mindset alters tactical behavior. It removes certain constraints that Western militaries assume. When facing an adversary willing to absorb losses to achieve strategic goals, traditional deterrence models begin to weaken. This doesn't mean recklessness. It means calculated risk on a different scale. Now let's bring this back to the U.S. Navy's perspective. American warships are designed for global operations, blue water dominance, and power projection. They excel in open ocean environments, but choke points are different. Narrow straits compress space and time. They reduce reaction windows. They magnify small threats. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most strategically vital and geographically restrictive waterways on Earth. Any disruption there has global consequences. That reality gives the Azarakhsh and similar platforms outsized importance. Here's another suspense loop. Technology does not eliminate vulnerability, it changes it. Advanced sensors and weapons provide incredible capabilities, but they also introduce complexity. Complex systems require integration, maintenance, and human judgment. Under stress, complexity can become a liability. Swarm tactics exploit that by forcing defenders to manage too many variables at once. The goal is not to defeat technology, but to overwhelm it. There's also a time factor that often gets overlooked. Swarm attacks compress engagement timelines. Decisions that might normally take minutes must be made in seconds. Identification, classification, authorization, and response all happen under extreme pressure. This is where training matters, but even the best training has limits. Humans are still human. Fatigue, uncertainty, and fear play roles no simulation can fully replicate. Another insight worth teasing: the Azarakhsh doesn't need cutting-edge stealth or advanced electronics to be effective. Its strength lies in coordination and numbers. This makes the tactic accessible and adaptable. It's not dependent on a single technological breakthrough. It's a concept that can evolve. That adaptability is part of why analysts take it seriously. It's not static, it learns. It changes, it responds to countermeasures. Now imagine this scenario unfolding not as a single event, but as part of a broader crisis. Tensions rise, forces deploy, alerts increase. Every encounter becomes more dangerous. A swarm doesn't need to attack to shape outcomes. Its mere presence forces warships to alter routes, increase escort requirements, and remain in defensive postures. All of this affects operational tempo. All of this has strategic consequences. Let's pause and emotionally connect this to the broader stakes. Naval warfare isn't just about ships and weapons. It's about trade, energy, and stability. Millions of barrels of oil pass through these waters daily. Any disruption affects markets, prices, and livelihoods around the world. When a small boat can influence such massive systems, its importance grows far beyond its size. That's the uncomfortable reality of modern conflict. Another loop to hold your attention: deterrence works both ways. Just as U.S. naval presence deters aggression, Iran's swarm capability deters intervention. It raises the cost of action. It introduces uncertainty. Decision makers must weigh not just military outcomes, but political and economic fallout. The Azarakhsh contributes to that calculation by making worst-case scenarios more plausible. From a reporting perspective, what's fascinating is how quiet this threat often is in public discourse. There's no dramatic launch footage, no massive explosions to circulate, but behind the scenes, planners are thinking about it constantly. Exercises are built around it. Countermeasures are tested against it. New doctrines are written because of it. That alone tells you how seriously it's taken. Another suspense beat: countering the swarm is possible, but never perfect. New technologies like directed energy weapons, improved sensors, and unmanned systems are being developed to address this challenge. But each solution introduces new questions. How reliable is it? How does it perform under stress? How does it integrate with existing systems? The race between offense and defense continues, and the Azarakhsh sits firmly on the offensive side of that equation. Let's talk briefly about escalation, because this is where everything becomes dangerous very quickly. A swarm encounter gone wrong could trigger a rapid chain of events. Misinterpretation leads to engagement. Engagement leads to casualties. Casualties lead to retaliation. In such a compressed environment, leaders may have little time to de-escalate. The Azarakhsh doesn't just threaten ships, it threatens stability. Another loop: the human cost. Behind every system are people, sailors, families, communities. The stress of operating under constant threat takes a toll. Long deployments, high alert levels, and the knowledge that danger can appear suddenly all weigh heavily. Understanding this dimension reminds us that military strategy is not abstract. It's lived daily by those on the front lines. As we move toward the end of this analysis, the key takeaway becomes clear. The Azarakhsh terrifies not because it's invincible, but because it's disruptive. It challenges assumptions. It exploits geography, economics, and psychology. It forces powerful navies to adapt continuously. And in doing so, it proves that modern warfare is not just about who has the biggest weapons, but who understands the environment best. One final suspense loop before we close: the swarm tactic isn't limited to one region or one actor. It represents a broader trend in conflict. Smaller platforms network together, challenging larger systems. This concept is spreading. Watching how it evolves tells us a lot about the future of warfare, and that future may arrive faster than many expect. So the next time you see a massive warship cutting through calm waters, remember this: its greatest threat might not come from the horizon, but from the surface all around it, quiet, fast, relentless, and designed to turn strength into vulnerability. That's why Iran's Azarakhsh boat matters. That's why the swarm matters. And that's why staying informed has never been more important. Stay alert, stay curious, and keep watching the seas, because the next chapter in naval warfare is already unfolding.